All right, well, welcome to the December IDEA meeting. This is the last, speaking of scrambles, the last week before the winter break. Just always feels like just an unending amount of craziness and getting things done before the end of the year so that I can come back at the beginning of the year and someone said, oh, I talked to you last year about this thing. Um, so I appreciate everybody who's probably in the same boat and taking the time to attend today's meeting. We have quite a few topics to cover. And so I'm not 100% sure if we'll go the whole hour and a half, but maybe we will. We'll see. We have the time. So I'm just going to kind of walk through the agenda a bit. So first, we sent out sort of a quick sort of call for community insights a while back, and we heard from a couple of folks. So we're going to hear from I think it's Tonu and Patrick from DRC and Lattice, respectively, about what's happening in their world. And then we're going to hear about the latest on the LDW virtual team. There was a call for feedback that I sent yesterday on behalf of the team. So we're going to kind of walk through some of that regarding the personas. Your regularly scheduled EDP update from Jeremiah and Bob, and then Amy will talk about what's happening in the EDMR data governance world. And so that's quite a few things to cover here. So first, I want to start with the IDEA community insights. So we have a couple of folks who responded to the call for some innovative work ideas and efforts that went out well over a month ago. And so first I want to introduce Tonu Mick from Disability Resources Center to talk about the Boomi process that queries the group groups. So hopefully I pronounced your name correctly.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks, Colin. Yes, my name is Tono Mek. I work in a Disability Resource Center, and I would like to share a Boomi process that we created to be notified of staffing changes. And if you'd like to follow along, the presentation is at z.umn.edu, grouper-Boomi. The a challenge that we were facing was we were often not notified when a staff leaves. And so we wanted to know that so that we could disable their access. We learn pretty well when a staff comes on board, but when they leave, we didn't often know. And so we try to figure out if there's a way to be notified. And we could do it using these following components. First, we identified a PeopleSoft department ID for our department. And then we have a grouper group that is built automatically and includes the people, all of whom have this department ID associated with them in PeopleSoft. Then we learned about making an API call to get the grouper group's membership, and we put it all together in a Boomi process. The department ID, we got that from the My Account listing. There's many department IDs there, and so we found ours for Disability Resource Center. And the department ID is used in PeopleSoft, and it's associated with people. So whenever someone gets that department ID, then the grouper group is automatically updated with that person's credentials. We also asked the grouper group to create us a group that is automatically built based on that department ID. And then we built a Boomi process the Boomi process first makes a call to the group and retrieves the group membership. And then we use the find changes step to identify the changes in the membership. And when using the find changes step, it automatically creates the 3 branches that are shown here, the add, update, and delete branch. I'll talk a little bit about how we created the API call. So API call to the grouper to retrieve a grouper membership, it uses a post request. And this is an example of the post request body that's specific to our office. It includes the group name in here. And the URL is another important item to know for making the API call. And once we have that, we get back a list of people, all of which are associated with our department ID. Then the find changes step takes a flat file as its source, and it asks us to identify a key column in the flat file. And so from the response we get back from a group, we extract internet ID and person's name. And so that's what's contained in the flat file. And then we use the internet ID as our key column indicator. And the 3 branches in the find changes step all are quite identical to each other. They all include a combine documents step, then a message step that takes the current data from combined documents, and then the emailing step that emails us the result. The emailing step has different subject lines for additions and updates or deletes. And I should mention that the combined document shape is good to include so that multiple changes could all be combined into a single email. So if it didn't have that, it would send individual emails with each update or in the membership. And a note about the initial deployment of this process. During the initial deployment, all of the group members go through the add branch of the find changes step. And so it's expected that the email will contain all of the people's information during a first deployment. But the subsequent queries, subsequent calls to the group will only then go through the appropriate branch as necessary. And here's an example of the emails that you would get using this process. And yeah, in summary, it was possible to do using a Boomi process and having a department ID for our department. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. So this is in production right now?
Yes, it is. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And is it just been working pretty much as expected? Working pretty well?
Yes, I have been notified of a couple additions. I'm yet to see removals. And part of what's perhaps a little bit unknown to me is how does information in PeopleSoft get updated? You know, can this data be reliable? Is this data something that I can use? Yeah.
Cool.
Hey,
oh, sorry, go ahead, Ted.
Yeah. Tano, I have a quick question too. I probably missed it at the beginning, but I'm curious about the business use cases, across DRC for having that, knowledge or awareness of those kinds of changes, just generally what kind of business processes happen based on that.
Yeah. So we have our internal application that we use, and so when staff leaves, we need to remove their access. And often myself and my coworker are not notified of when staff leave. So that's a primary use case, being notified of staff leaving. And it kind of gives us a prompt to reach out to a manager of that employee who we are looking into and asking them, hey, did this staff person leave and no longer works in the DRC? And once they receive a confirmation, we can then remove our access.
Great, thank you.
There's a question from Ilya in the chat about what's the size of your team/unit?
Yes, it's a good question. When I retrieve the group membership using this process that I just described, I got back about 130 people. And I first wondered how is our office so big? Because I think of our office as being only 70 people or so. And I think, so in general, it's about 70 to 150.
If there are no other questions, I just want to thank you very much for giving that talk and pulling all these different pieces together with Grouper and Boomi. And now I want to turn it over to Patrick Russell from Lattice to talk about CLA high volume hiring management solutions.
So yeah, talking about a solution that we've had for a while now, used to manage hiring for the employee groups that are quite high volume for us. And so we have distributed hiring within our college, and managing that process from when the candidate's selected and an offer letter needs to be created, and it needs to be reviewed, accepted by the candidate, and then ultimately entered into PeopleSoft and other onboarding tasks, and how we've kind of used a workflow tool to integrate that. So we wanted, our goal with this was to lever automation, and create standardization as efficiently as possible, letting departments create their own letters, but having them use established templates. So we made sure offer letters had required language, and when required language changed, we could use the new language seamlessly. When it comes to data, we have a lot of data integrations. And our goal would be like, don't ask for information that is available elsewhere. Don't make people go out and look at another report or information that we can present within the tool, and have them select as much as possible instead of enter where it makes sense. Common workflow need, route and gather approvals electronically. And then, like I said, when an offer is accepted, identifying which onboarding steps are needed and initiating those automatically, not requiring a second step for the hiring administrator. And then ultimately, having this process, it helped us maintain some flexibility. We are phase 2 of Peak, so we went live in December, and Peak did impact us quite directly with this process, but we were able to pivot in consultation with OHR just to continue to use this tool for part of the process, and then have the handoff to OHR through TDX. For a sense of the volume, this is stuff we had prepared for Peak to get a sense of where our hiring was. It's about 2,700 hires a year on average that we manage through this tool. And when Peak came along, Peak is providing, OHR is providing some full cycle recruiting support where they will create offer letters, they'll work directly, but it's really a small volume of our hires. And so this full cycle support from OHR is only 3.82% of our hires, staff hires. So all these Laserfiche hire types, we are continue to be responsible for creating offer letters and managing on some of the onboarding tasks. And then, like I said, we don't do all of our unit supported hires through Laserfiche, but it is a high, it's almost 90% of these types of hires. The system we use is Laserfiche. It's a enterprise content management platform that we have licenses for. We went out for RFP in 2018. I think we were finally on board with it in 2020, right as COVID hit. We were working through building a new process through COVID. I won't go through this in detail. Besides, it forms workflow content management through a repository, very similar to the Jadu Perceptive integration that we have as an enterprise tool. We run the on-premises installation of it, but they do have a cloud solution. And then where we're using that process, preparing that offer letter, we have a Laserfiche form that collects the information, merges it into our established Word templates for an offer letter, and then sends it to the candidate electronically. We do have logic within the process when an offer has elements of it that need approval by our human resources or accounting areas. It routes there automatically, and then to the candidate to accept. They accept via a Laserfiche form using simple e-signature. And then once they accept, onboarding begins. We send the signed offer letter to Perceptive Content through an API. Now with Peak, pre-Peak, this routed to CLA staff to enter into PeopleSoft. Now we notified the hiring administrator that they need to take a second step now to go to TDX to initiate this hire. This is one of those ways we were able to be flexible on adjusting this process to meet the Peak process. And then just an example of an onboarding step that we retain as a part of Peak, the I-9 verification for new employees continues to need to be completed by the college. And so now by using this process, we are able to continue to initiate that automatically with notifications and tracking. Within our process, the ways we use enterprise data, usually populating lookups and dropdowns or controlling form logic, filtering dropdowns based on previous information and logic. We do this by populating our own SQL tables nightly from the legacy data warehouse. We have a workflow that runs and updates all those SQL tables. And then here are some examples of the enterprise data that we are using. Employee ID and university email for people who are current people within PeopleSoft. HR, the position number is a big one. That's a complicated data element of the HR, and we're able to kind of guide our units through picking position numbers. We're able to bring in funding information that can be selected instead of typed. And then a lot of these appointments, graduate assistants and teaching specialists and lecturers in particular, are instructional, and they do have course information included in their offers. And so we do tie to the course information in data warehouse, and so units can select the courses and populate the letter. So here are some examples of the course search and how that shows up. They pick a term, and then they can do type ahead to pick their course. Position management, this list is filtered. They've filled out, at this point, filled out a lot of information in the form that helps us filter this to positions that meet the criteria of the offer they're creating. And then the example of the funding dropdown that is provided. We do have some unit maintained data, stuff that isn't enterprise data, that we keep in those same SQL tables. So we do control access to the system. The only authorized users for each department can create hires and view the data. Payroll and semester academic year appointment dates are different from term dates, but they are not anywhere in an enterprise table. So we maintain our own table of that. And then the letters are specific to the units, and we give the units the ability to manage the information in them. So the letterhead details, who can sign the letters. And then throughout the process, we do keep tables that keep track of status so that we can communicate with units to let them know where things are. So an example here, when Anthropology picks, they get their letterhead that gets applied to the letter. They can choose who's signing the letter, and there are signature images associated with these people that get applied to the letter. And then by picking spring 2025, the appointment dates automatically populate, but remain editable if they need to adjust them because they won't be teaching the full semester or something along those lines. And the output, big output is the offer letter. Again, the Word template with the merge fields that come from the form that's filled out. You can see the name. We're able to, with the Peak upgrade, start using preferred name where necessary or where indicated. The dates that flowed from the form, the amount that's paid, and then that course information. The rest of the letter is really a lot of that stock language from the OHR templates that's required for offer letters. Like I said before, Peak, this would route to somebody within the college to enter into PeopleSoft, but now our hiring administrators need to go to TDX to enter this. So we email them to say, this offer is accepted. You're ready to go. Here's the offer information you entered. You can use this to help fill out TDX, right? You don't have to go back to Laserfiche to figure out what the appointment details were. And so this gets emailed to them and used for their records to help process the TDX portion of the process. Like I said, we remain responsible for I-9 verification within the college. And so for people who aren't immersed in the minutia of HR, this is Form I-9 is something that new hires need to fill out to verify identity and employment eligibility. And it is a real sticking point for the university on compliance because there is a very firm deadline of the employee's hire date that they need to complete it by. We had to get more efficient with it because with peak, we used to have 6 I-9 administrators and 3 of them left for peak positions. And so now we're down to 3. And this is highly cyclical, a lot of fall hiring, just like everything else for fall, there's a lot of it. That's probably half of the I-9s we do the entire year, maybe even more than half. And so it's something that we want to be efficient all year round, but particularly for that period of time. And so how do we do that? Here's just kind of some snapshots of our actual workflow engine. The send offer to applicant is that process that manages getting the acceptance. Once it's accepted, we determine from PeopleSoft data whether or not the person needs to do an I-9, and we trigger a separate process, our I-9 standalone process. And this is just kind of a quick view of that workflow going through, gathering some data, and then kicking off that separate process. We don't do all our hires through I-9, so Laserfiche is flexible enough that we can initiate that standalone process ourselves with a Laserfiche form. So faculty hire, staff hire, those type of hires that we're not doing through the HR hiring tool where it's initiated automatically, we can go in and within that same process, initiate the tracking via a form. And what that creates then is a task for the I-9 administrator to follow, to update as things get completed, has all this information here, just, to determine the right course of action, when it needs to get done by, what communication has happened with the employee, have they made an appointment yet? Again, that's all auto-created and then maintained by a person. We can send reminders. People forget to make appointments. Their deadline's approaching. The system can send them reminders. We don't need a staff member to do that. So we just need to know the date it needs to be done by, and then Laserfiche can send automated reminders. So an example of reminders here. And then we are taking that process and we made our own table of employee I-9 data and have connected it to Tableau. So we can maintain visibility for our departments with filtered access to only their department, and they can see the status. And so they're up to date on what's going on with I-9 verification for their unit without a staff member manually needing to email or maintain a Google Sheet. This used to be a Google Sheet thing before we had Laserfiche. And so this is something that we're able to provide to our units so that they can follow up with them or follow up with the supervisor. And it's really helped keep them in the loop on processes. And then when an I-9 is completed, there are certain notifications need to go out. We want to let the department know that it's completed. OHR requires that units notify them when foreign nationals complete I-9s and certain other information. So by doing this process, it doesn't require somebody to send multiple emails. The process will send the emails itself. It'll use data from the process to populate the emails and do it automatically. And so we're saving a lot of staff time and remaining in compliance with those requirements as well. That's what I had. Yeah, questions?
Thank you very much.
Hopefully I didn't go too fast.
No, it was fine. It's super interesting. I had a couple questions, but if folks have any, just please put them in chat, or I guess just go ahead and ask them. But I mean, one sort of question I have is just like, why Laserfiche? So
sure.
So the argument for that.
That's a great question. When we were looking, Jadu was just being selected as an enterprise tool and just starting out. It wasn't mature enough to handle our needs from a workflow and forms standpoint. Also, it was relying on the common data layer, which had almost none of the data that we needed at that time. We were kind of on a deadline with this update because the solution, we were iterating on a homegrown solution that was built on Ruby and was going out of date. and we wanted to move to a platform solution instead of a homegrown solution. So we couldn't wait for Jadu to catch up at that point. Creating the letters is the key of this process, and that is not something that was anywhere on the roadmap for Jadu. And then access controls. We wanted units to have access to their information, but only their information. And Perceptive at that time just wasn't able to maintain, we would have to get so granular with our access within Perceptive, it would have been unmanageable. That's something that we can manage with workflow in Laserfiche. When we give somebody access, it can automatically assign access to just their departments, just certain hire types. And so it's an integrated solution, so it talks to itself. We were able to use the SQL tables for data. And so it kind of checked a lot of boxes for us. And it came in relatively affordable from a licensing standpoint, where that wasn't prohibitive, right? From that perspective.
Thanks. Craig asks, any thoughts about doing this in Salesforce?
No, I think we haven't looked at it. I mean, I do think we'll evaluate other solutions over time. Obviously, Peak has changed the game, and Peak will continue to iterate, and maybe we won't be doing offer letters in the future. So it's much more likely that Peak might catch up. OHR may provide the service where we might not need this tool to create offer letters, and then that would change what we do. Yeah, Smartsheets, again, I think the data, at that time we didn't evaluate Smartsheet. I don't think they responded to the RFP. So we went out to RFP for this, and so we didn't see it, but Smartsheet was talked about as a solution. Again, I think for a unit this college with this many users who need to create things, I think we were looking for a way. It's just myself and Eleni Fellows who primarily manage this, and so something that was easier to manage, was user-friendly, and had all the tools that we needed. So it's continued to work. We've been able to improve it. We've been able to adjust it. It's been a really strong tool for us.
So speaking of that, just I guess my last question here is just, so how would you see this process being improved from where it is right now, if at all?
That's a great question. I think some lessons learned about using data and helping people is sometimes you can help them too much, and you can filter information based on what they've told you, but they think that they're missing things, right? Their understanding is different. And so I think when we first went live with this, we were helping people pick position numbers, and they were convinced that they weren't seeing the position numbers they needed. And what was really happening is they didn't understand the attributes of position numbers they needed. That's one of the reasons we put that in, is because in our previous system, people were picking position numbers wrong that were creating work for staff. And so we were trying to help them. So I think I don't want to say make the form less smart, but maybe a little less smart, and maybe educate people through the form, provide in-context information, a little more in-context information to help them make the selection a little bit more, I think would have been a little smoother transition. I think ultimately this was always a process where information had to flow to a person to enter into PeopleSoft. Laserfiche has the ability to update tables. This could have been done automatically and not require a person to re-enter data into PeopleSoft. So we would have had some data integrity there. So you'd still get errors where somebody said it was $20.58 an hour, and the person would enter the pay rate as $20.85, right? So there is the ability to leverage taking that data entry piece out. Now, that has to be evaluated on how complicated HR data. Tony talking about like PeopleSoft and whether it's updated, I totally get that. It's complicated entry. It doesn't always get done on time, and it doesn't always get done accurately because it's complicated. So there may be aspects of that wouldn't work, but it would be interesting. We worked with a partner to put this. It's a very complicated process. That I won't even show you the workflow. It's super complicated. We had to work with a partner to actually build the initial version of it, and it would be hard to unwork. What was I trying to say there? It's a complicated process that, I don't know, I guess I forgot where I was going with that now. And that going back to the partner aspect of it. But yeah, I think there are ways that, I know I was gonna say that the partner was asking us why we weren't doing that. why do you have a person entering? And we had to talk about the university and the ecosystem and the access to those tables, and also the complication with the entry.
Thank you. All right, well, that is really helpful. Not seeing any other questions, so we will move on to the next topic, which is the Legacy Data Warehouse virtual team.
All right. Well, thank you, Colin. And today I'm going to be talking about the LDW Business Use Analysis workstream. Just as a reminder, we're part of the Data Management and Technology Modernization Initiative. We call it DMTM for short because everybody wants to shorten that. Some people refer to it as the initiative. Seems a little ominous. But so our workstream goals, I just want to review quickly. We are here to engage the broader IT community through this whole process. We're shifting LDWs to a different platform, and we want to represent the user's needs. We will be gathering use cases and get to know the business needs of LDW users so we can perform analysis on that. So briefly, the progress that we made that I'm going to review fairly lightly in some areas is we continued the interviews. Those interviews with LDW users fed into the development of personas. Carter is here again today. He's one of the team members, and he'll be giving some general points about groupings of personas. And the detailed personas are linked in that in the chat. It has very specific breakdowns of everything. We're not going to be going into much depth with that. We developed a survey to gather information from a broader audience, and I'll be touching on some points of that. And then the DMTM launched a website, and it's all of the work streams, not just LDW. So I'm going to hand the personas over to Carter to give you some updates.
Thanks, Jessica. Some quick background in case this is your first time hearing from us, or if you just need a refresher. We found that our personas attributes fell into a few categories here. Role information, team information, data usage and tools, and urgency and resiliency. These categories of attributes kind of came up through the process of refining the early questions we had about LDW users into the interview guide that we used when meeting with people in this first kind of group of folks that we've talked to. We didn't just collect information on attributes, though, in these interviews. We also had some additional questions, which you can see here, just to get feedback on what people do and don't like about the LDW, and so that we could identify some gaps in the information we were asking of people. With that quick recap out of the way, we've got 9 personas now instead of the 6 from our previous presentation. Most of them we're feeling are on pretty solid foundations. You'll have access to this collection through the link in the chat and the email from Colin yesterday. You might have had a chance to look at it already. You might have also noticed that you don't fit into one persona exactly, or you might see parts of your work in multiple places. That's to be expected here. We hope that you are able to see yourself through one or multiple of these, and we have been getting some repeat answers, which is a good indication we're on the right track here, but there are still opportunities for you to be heard yet. This first trio of personas here include the systems analyst, developer, and technology architect personas. This group are highly technical. They're building and supporting apps, processes, and systems. They're using a variety of tools, including things like Python, Ruby on Rails, which appeared a few times, and of course, SQL IDs like SQL Developer and DataGrep, etc. These personas in particular have existed for quite a while for us now, and have many interviews supporting each of them. There's, of course, more information on the individual slides for all of these, so feel free to give those a look as needed. This next group here, also fairly technical. This is the data analyst, research specialist, and auditor/external reporter. These folks are more focused on data analysis and reporting than building things like apps and processes. They need the LDW for some key data that isn't available elsewhere and have more variability on how they're accessing the legacy data warehouse. They're using SQL Developer as well, just like the previous group, but they're using a bunch of different tools that aren't represented yet. Things like Excel, R, Tableau, and some other reporting and analysis software. These three are a mix of new and old, including some that were created through the shuffling around of existing data we had from interviews as personas either evolved or got absorbed into others. And then on this last group here, we have the circumstantial LDW user, the data engineer, and the IT manager. This last group are still emerging for us. We don't have as many supporting interviews or information for them as we would love, but they're still worthwhile to keep in mind. They're doing things like supporting the creation of a custom data warehouse for a specific college at UMN. They're running legacy processes to keep things moving, or they're providing support for the people they oversee in LDW matters. The best through line for this group is that they're all supporting others through their work in the LDW as opposed to regular direct use. It's not their main thing, more or less. We still want to strengthen these personas and our others. So we're moving forward now with work on the, we're moving forward with that work through the LDW user survey. Our team is pretty close to finishing this survey up, and we intend for it to validate what we have for personas and to start bringing in some more info about use cases for the LDW. So with that, I will hand it over to Jessica again.
Thanks, Carter. So the LDW user survey goals very closely align with the goals that we have for the work stream. We are wanting to help. This is going to kind of firm up our cataloging and of data and then recording business use, and also will ensure that users have their voices heard. I want to review some content. So next, we're going to cover some information about your role, your count, and then data tables, data operations, and then there's some space for final questions. When we get to the point about your role in the about section of the survey, we are going to need to know your account. So that's the user account or the functional ID that goes in there. You may not have that or know it, and that would be okay. But we want to have that. And then in the about your role section, we are wondering if you're part of IT, how important this work is to you. And a lot of the things in the survey also were touched on in the personas because this is going to be used to validate some of the work that we did. In the data information we want to collect, we're going to ask about data tables, what kind of data you abstract, how do you use it, and things like how do you store data from the LDW. And then I really wanted to go through this fairly quickly. I didn't know how much time I would have. The final questions we have in there are open-ended. So it actually asks, what could the new data platform do for you better than what it currently does? And is there anything else you'd like to tell us? Finally, who is going to get this survey? It's going to be sent out to the existing users. We have a list of people who it will be sent out to and people who have been interviewed. If you have been interviewed already, we would ask that you still complete this. It will help validate what we've gathered. And will the survey be available to other people? Yes. The survey that we send out to users, they'll be able to forward that link. It's not specific to a single person. And then the survey will also be on the DMTM website. And that bridges me over to the Atlas website. So this was developed in conjunction with all of the work streams. So Jeremiah, Amy, the governance and architecture teams had some say in this or contributed heavily to it. And Bob is going to touch on this a little bit more later, but there's information from the work streams, the communication plan, They're answers to common questions, roadmap and timeline, and goals for the work stream. So all of the work streams information is on there. I'm just not going to go through it right now, but this is a link to the initiative. And so the next steps for our team, we are going to release the survey in early to mid-January. It's going to close early February. We're going to continue to meet with users to gain understanding into more use cases. So the first interviews that we just conducted helped build the personas. We are going to keep building on top of that. One of the things we're going to keep building into is a database. So we are creating a database in collaboration with the rest of the DMTM work streams so that we can perform that analysis on the business use cases. And we will be back here at the idea meetings, and we have started joining other meetings to give presentations on our work and get out into the community. Speaking of the community, I put a link in here, or put several links in here for the Atlas website and a community form. Upcoming resources are going to be the survey. If you would like to receive the survey, the community form, you can click on it and just say, hey, send me a survey. When the survey is released, we would send you the survey, but it's not going to be sent immediately. And then the questions for the room regarding the persona development. The reason I sent you the link and what Colin had shared out yesterday was to inform us if you see yourself in the personas that we've been developing. Are there roles that are missing? Are there details that aren't captured? And we welcome you to view those documents, page through them, and then you can put comments, questions, any responses in the document here. And yeah, so that is what I have. And I see there are some questions.
I had a question there because I heard the word functional account. So I just wanted to clarify, if we're completing one of these for each functional account we administer in addition to our own individual internet IDs, or what's the approach here for folks that have access provision to the legacy data warehouse through their functional accounts?
Yep. So there are multiple boxes where you can enter information for either whatever accesses it. So if you have a personal account that accesses it, you would put that information, and then there's another box for a functional ID that we would ask you to put that information into. So if you access the LDW through multiple accounts, if you have the information on how you access that, or the name, the username that you access it through, we would ask all of those be put in that box.
Okay. Let's see. Looks like there was another question. Looks like it was answered by Carter. Just would your persona include potential users who might have a need for a solution like LDW? We've been exploring options for storing website data and have been discussing LDW as a possible solution. And then Carter responded that all of our personas are based on information from people who use and need the LDW, so they reflect what we have seen so far from the group. Oh, and then Carter, do you want to say anything else about that?
Just for this particular question, we have had a few people note that they would like the ability to store LDW or store data in, a replacement system for legacy data warehouse in the future. I'm almost certain that that's noted on one or two of our personas. But if you see something or if you see something missing, basically, from your needs, we would really recommend that you keep an eye out for the survey and make sure to fill that out when it comes out, because getting that information from you through that method is going to be helpful, and is kind of our current planned way to keep adding stuff that we have missed so far. So
Thanks. Then Dan Glover says, like, I would say the personas are heavily in student info. I would typically go in to look at HR related info for positions across the enterprise. And I want to connect that to another observation on the circumstantial LDW user persona that indicated that only student and course data were being used. I know at least in at least in the pre ESOP world, there are a lot of folks who are carrying around queries against the LDW for HR related data. And so I just wanted to surface that as a thing.
I think that's a good point to bring up. I will just, as a little bit of background, the circumstantial LDW user was one of our kind of emerging personas. There's only 2 interviews we have that are feeding into that data right now. So as we get more responses from people, if that's a common thread, we'll likely see more.
All right, and the last one's just answered straight up. Can the survey be? Oh yeah, and finance seems underrepresented as well. Yep, and then David says for experts at MN, we use LDW mostly for faculty/researcher HR demographic data, which is more of what we were talking about. That's somewhat common use case here as well.
Yep, unfortunately, all of those are covered in the about you. What types of data do you abstract? And this is where you would enter HR data, student finance. There's a list that I didn't put in the survey because I didn't want to take up too much time, but everything is listed out there. And the survey includes things like data tables that are used, and then specific type of data that is in LDW, and we did that in conjunction with the governance team, so we can align those resources. Diane, I will be adding more from HR, including the historical data.
Okay. Just, is there a copy of the draft survey available for folks to kind of review to kind of get ready to help them prepare their responses?
Not right now, but I can work with DCC to release that information, because it would be helpful so you guys can have all the information you need while you sit down and complete it. The survey is, I believe, 30 questions long, and it depends on your answers. So it could be as short as 15, but could be as long as 30.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions in chat, so I just want to thank you very much, Jessica and Carter, for bringing this update and sharing the link to the DMTM website.
Yeah,
next up, yep, no problem. Next up, we have Bob and Jeremiah to tell us what's going on with the EDB proper.
Thanks, Colin. Appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. Just a quick update on what's been happening on the technology/architecture side of the initiative for the enterprise data platform. I'm just got a short bulleted list of things that have been going on. I'll give some additional details with them as we go, though. So if you recall, at the last IDEA meeting, we had just gotten approval for our Databricks and Azure architecture, and the approval of that was going to facilitate us doing a one-time load of PeopleSoft data into our data platform so we could do some testing and validation of our ETLs. We've done that one-time load, that was completed successfully. And since then, we have been doing ongoing testing of our Databricks ETLs, doing performance testing, just going through lots of iterations of ensuring that the work we have done to move that data through our Databricks instance is working as we expect it to. We found some good information based on that. So we've been doing some optimization of how we have our clusters configured, how many processes are running on a given cluster, things like that. So the testing has been very valuable, and the team has found some great insights as we move forward. We're working very closely with Databricks to fine-tune performance, and we're nearing the end of that. We have some more testing we're doing, but we still have some more testing to do on that before we kind of validate the overall performance of the architecture as a whole. and we can talk more about that at the next meeting with the results of that were. So in conjunction with that ongoing testing, there have been 2 additional security architecture review board presentations. The first one, shortly after our last idea meeting, was to present the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure architecture that will be used to host our Golden Gate tool. Golden Gate is our tool that does the actual change data capture. So after the presentation of OCI, we received feedback. The feedback from that provided guidance to the team on some key compliance issues that need to be resolved. And the team has been working through those compliance issues that were identified to resolve those, as well as we're continuing to work with our Oracle Consulting Services partners on the overall implementation, converting the configuration we've done and the design we built with Oracle into an actual executable code base for infrastructure as code. So we're continuing to work on that, as well as refining our security control mappings to ensure that we are meeting data security needs, looking to the future of data security needs with some new security compliance regulations that while not in place yet and not required of us, that we anticipate will be coming. So we want to kind of prepare for those in the future. So we'll continue to work through that mapping for those. In addition, we have presented our Golden Gate architecture SARB to the review board for them to review. We're waiting feedback on that. We do anticipate that part of the feedback coming on Golden Gate, there's going to be a requirement that OCI is fully approved, which makes sense simply because Golden Gate is going to be hosted on OCI. So there's obviously a necessity to have the OCI architecture approved before getting full approval for Golden Gate. So there's a couple other dependencies that we have to get Golden Gate up and running. And those are lines to occur in January timeframe. We'll keep you updated on any times that change to ensure we have a successful Golden Gate install as soon as we get that done, and we can share the results of that. And then, as Jessica mentioned, the initiative website, I've got the website listed here as well. We do have it up and running. It was published late last week, and we're sharing that with you today. We do anticipate making ongoing updates to that. We have some roadmap items that are listed out there with some high-level dates. You can go ahead and look at those. We'll make changes to those as necessary and keep you informed to ongoing changes that's occurring there. So again, there's been a lot of work happening behind the scenes as the team has been kind of heads down doing their performance testing inside of our Azure Databricks environment, making refinements and correcting errors, and working with our Databricks part to ensure that we have the best performance in there. So not a lot to share as opposed to a lot of individual successes, but lots of work has been done, and we're making progress on our overall platform. So that's all that I had. Any questions?
The only one I saw in chat was just about what is Golden Gate, which is the change data capture tool, which is going to help propagate the changes from PeopleSoft into Databricks, and the other one was just about what OCI is, which is Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, which is where it's hosted. Thank you very much, Bob. Yeah, take it away, Amy. What's new?
Right, thank you so much. Hi, everybody. I have a couple of overall data governance updates, and then I'll hand it over to the folks who are working on the LDW work in this space. So first, I have kind of just been keeping you all updated along the way. We currently have an RFI out regarding a data governance tool, and this is closing at the end of the month. That RFI will help give us a better understanding of the range of capabilities these products provide. As I think I've said in this group before, one of the key requirements for us is around a user-friendly data catalog with metadata management that goes from business terminology to technical definitions and lineage, which I know has been something that this group has been brought up of the challenges they have right now in terms of being able to get to the information about the data as we look at that. So that is ongoing work we have, and we'll be continuing to update you all as we move out of that RFI and see what options are out there as we've talked to people. And then next is, again, just an awareness item, is the OMB race and ethnicity changes. I think I spoke with you all maybe in the early spring about this. They officially released the changes to the collection of race and ethnicity data at a federal level in March of this year. This is the first change since 1997. IPEDS released their technical review panel of summary recommendations regarding those changes. That is now open for comment period until mid-January. So the only reason, again, we're not looking for any action from you all right now. This is just an awareness to continue for you all to know this is coming. And as we think about institutionally, what changes will come through channels like PeopleSoft, et cetera. But we've been waiting for some things like IPEDS to understand both the timing and how they're approaching some of these things as we look at both the changes to the high level federal categories as well as collecting detailed race and ethnicity data. So that one's just, again, just to have you make sure it stays on your radar because it will affect many systems throughout the institution as we think about how we collect this data moving forward. Is there any questions for me on those two general data governance items?
Will the new tool replace IDEA or a complementary tool?
We would be looking for it to replace the IDEA glossary. Partially, Ilya, because we heard from you all that it's not usable in a way that is helpful for you all. Okay. All right. And so then the next piece is that we have been moving forward on the third work stream of the Data Management Technology Modernization Initiative. And we've spun up within institutional analysis, a new group led by Jess McDonald. I'm going to turn it over to her. You're going to start hearing from her when it comes to the LDW assessment and cataloging on the data side of as we move forward. So Jess, I'll turn it over to you and the team.
Sure. Thank you, Amy. It is so good to see you all. I am Jess McDonald. I have gone back and watched a lot of the IDEA meetings and gotten all of Colin's delightful gardening updates, but I believe this is the first one that I've attended. So thank you.
You're welcome.
As Amy mentioned, I am the lead on the University Data Projects team. I believe Andy and Jessica are likely both familiar to many of you. They are also members of that team. Andy is our business analyst and Jessica Ford is our SQL developer. So we are a work stream within this, the initiative, as Jessica Velguth so dubiously named it. And we are leading the assessment and eventual cataloging of the legacy data warehouse tables and views. So we are working in very close collaboration, especially with the virtual team. The way that I'm kind of currently conceptualizing it is they are really focused on the who of this project, and we're kind of focusing a little bit more on the what, but there is a good amount of overlap that will be informing back and forth, both in terms of what we prioritize and how we manage the tables that we identify for eventual movement to the new platform. So that's happening. We're meeting with them several times a week, and we will also be providing updates to that website that's been shared a few times. And that's also a good way to get in touch with us with any sorts of questions or concerns you have for this work stream. So our current work, I've been colloquially calling this our big messy pile. So we have gotten a list of the data tables and views from the EDA team. And we're not yet focused on cataloging any of those. We're really just trying to get our arms around what those are and the characteristics of the data within the tables. So we've been identifying the key characteristics of the LDW tables, both for business need and cataloging prioritization. Our current scope of the work is about 30,000 tables. Again, we will not be cataloging all of those. We're really trying to get an idea of what our highest priority tables are in that set. And then maybe what we don't need moving forward into the new platform, either due to duplication or security risk, or maybe they're just not highly utilized. So that's why we're looking at characteristics like usage and risk and subject areas. So I do want to call out that I heard for the virtual team that there's maybe some folks that want to make sure that the finance data and HR data is included in the scope of this as well. That's something that we are looking at, usage for, how many times that's been touched in the past year, who those data owners are. So we're coming at this at a little bit different angle, which I am certain will be complementary to the work that the virtual team is doing. We are informing the creation of that database that they mentioned in terms of the surveys and the personas, and we were a part of that survey as well. So our initial pass is going to be parsing tables for exclusion and then give some broad characterization by subject area is our plan. We're hoping to be working on that this month and next month, and then start coming up with a plan of how we're going to piece this work into some manageable chunks. Yep, so that's kind of where we are right now. We'll be coming back to this group frequently with updates about where we are in that process. We just got started at the end of October, so we're a little bit behind, I guess, some of the other work streams, but we're catching up fast and relying on the knowledge that they've already gathered from our user community. So that is where we are right now. And do we have any questions? I don't think I saw any pop up.
Not
Oh, wait, maybe I
seeing
did.
any right now.
Okay. All right, wonderful, thank you.
Yep, thank you. All right, February idea already putting itself together here. So, well, I just want to thank everybody very much for sharing all of the updates and talking about what's happening in DRC and Lattice and everything. So it looks like we got through all of that in just over an hour. So I will return 24 minutes to your calendar. Enjoy the rest of the month, and we'll see you in February.